What is going on, everybody? Beth was nice enough to take some time out of her day to talk about her experience going through this. I think we've discussed this a lot, and she understands the value of hearing other people's stories. I think, Beth, you had read some of the reviews kind of before working with me, and yeah, it can be a very, very helpful thing. So what we'll do today is kind of just hear from Beth and talk about your story a little bit. And maybe the most helpful thing to start with is give us a little bit of background of what was going on, what you were dealing with, a little history there, and then we can talk about kind of what happened when we met and what we did and where we're at now.
Sure. Well, my symptoms came on May 8th of last year. You know, I don't remember a lot these days, but it's interesting how you remember the day your life changes, I guess you could say. So last year, leading up to it, I guess I can't just say like a couple months. I think it was kind of years in the making. Went through a very stressful divorce, own my own business. And obviously, as we all know, with the economy, it's been, it's very stressful owning your own business. And I think kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was I had 2 medical procedures that were kind of stressful with the results. Everything came out great, but I think that was the straw that kind of broke the camel's back. My stress bucket got a little full and overflowed, and it just kind of put my life into a tailspin.
Yeah. That's so super common. It's kind of similar situation to a lot of people I work with and what I went through. After that started, what were kind of the initial symptoms? What did you hear from, as much as, we don't need to go into detail, but what did you hear from kind of medical providers? I know that can often be scary when everything's coming back normal. Like, kind of just talk us through, like, what were you dealing with after this initial onset stuff?
I found with following you when I finally found you, my experience was no different than a lot of people's. I believe I went to 8 or 9 doctors.
Yeah.
I literally would have hung from the ceiling from my feet at that point if someone would have told me to. I kind of lost my faith in the medical system because everyone just wanted to put me on an antidepressant. And for some people that works out great. So I'm not against them. It's just, I never had anxiety a day in my life. And here I was having panic attacks and heart palpitations, and just no one could guide me. And I felt I was so lost, and I fell down the Google hole of Googling my symptoms, which is the worst thing, but in the best way, actually, it helped me find you amongst of lots of other material. So I guess you could say if there's, a silver lining, that was it, that I found you. And I believe I found you on TikTok and then followed you on Instagram. And that's when I kind of, came to the realization that, okay, there's something else going on here, but nobody really knows pretty much what they're doing. And I found one doctor locally that did figure out I had cervicogenic dizziness, but he told me to just get massages, and that didn't do anything for me. In fact, it made it much worse when I would be done with the massage. And so there's a lot of material out there, but it's really scary because I had no idea what was going on with my brain. I had CAT scans done. They couldn't find anything. I had full workups of my ears with, they do the water in the ear. Everything came back, and every single doctor that took the test said, "Oh, I'm sorry to say there's nothing." I'm like, well, no, it's good that there's nothing wrong. But I had a stress test where I was running on the treadmill because of my heart palpitations, and I came back with flat. So it was very, very frustrating because no one could tell me what was going on. I went to like 3 or 4 different physical therapists, and they were just treating me like a normal vertigo. And it's not, as we all know, it's not a normal vertigo. What I felt like is I felt like I was like this all day. If I turned real quick, it would it wasn't really like a spin. It was almost like a slow motion of but I didn't have the symptoms when I drove, when I sat, and when I slept. And that was the weird part.
Yeah.
That was the weird part.
You kind of had that cloudy off balance feeling somewhat constantly when you're up and moving, and then you're dealing
I
with
almost felt like there was like a Brillo pad in my brain right here. It just felt like and if that's what brain fog is, I guess, I'm not sure, but I couldn't hold a thought in my head, and I own my own business, and that's very dangerous.
Yeah. It seemed like when we met and we talked about, hey, goals and what was going on right now, what do we want to get from this? It did come down to like, hey, day to day, I need to be able to feel clear headed and good for lots of reasons, but career stuff, social stuff, being able to, be there for your son and excited about the wedding and things like that. So having often like dizziness can having its effect in a lot of different areas in life at first.
Yeah, it really, talk about a tailspin. It changed everything in my life.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find my way out of a box if I tried. It was just, it consumed every day, every minute. And I just didn't know how to get out of it. I really
Yeah.
didn't. Really didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm going to be like this forever. Like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Kind of that, like we talked about when we met, that kind of lost in the woods feeling of like, I do not like this. It's not comfortable, but I don't know what to do to fix it kind of
Yeah.
situation.
Nobody could tell me anything. And that was the frustrating part. And then when I found there was a community of people that have this, it's like, it kind of puts your mind at ease, but it kind of doesn't. Like, okay, great. Now we all have this. Now what do we do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And one question that I almost always get from people when I post content such as this is like, well, what did you guys do? And that's a really hard question to answer because you can attest to this. We've done dozens and dozens of different things. So it's impractical and not helpful to try to list all those things because everybody's situation is different. But if you had to kind of say from a big picture view, from when we met to where we are now, what are the big things we worked on? I think people would be interested in hearing that. I know some of it, like just some neck related stuff, visual stuff, getting back to the gym. So in your own words, what would you kind of summarize it as?
Well, you said it best. And I think you said on one of your channels and one of your videos, we have to make what's weak strong, and we have to make what's tight relaxed. And that was the biggest thing for me, is my neck and shoulders, and and a lot of it's because of what I do for a living. So it's like I never get a break. So my exercises were key. Like when I first met with you, I could not, this is where my head stopped.
Yeah.
And now I have a complete range of motion on my left hand side with no pain, no tightness.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And just for clarity, what she was speaking to is kind of like when we're working on the first stage of helping somebody with neck related stuff, we're trying to identify why is there a faulty movement pattern. And that's typically because of changes. Something is too tight, too stiff, too weak. We're going to try to change that and fix the neck related issues first. So just to give some context to kind of what that means, but yeah, well said there. And then would you say kind of the busy visual stuff, how did that go for you? I know we worked a little bit on getting comfortable with that stuff.
That I would say, a lot of people have asked the same questions. Like I had a lot of visual dependency. I had a lot. And I think you were actually the first person that said, I actually think you got to touch a triple PD. And no other doctors had even mentioned that. And I had read about it and I had heard about it, but I had a lot of visual dependency, a lot. And I don't know if it's because of what I do for a living or just how far down the rabbit hole I was with how far gone. And one of the things that I noticed a big difference is if the lighting was dim, man, my eyes they couldn't focus. I would think lights would be flickering on it. I would say to someone, did that light just flicker? Is that just me?
Yeah.
And even if the lights were dim, I couldn't see a wall where normally I should have been able to see that wall. And now that's pretty much gone. Just in the 3 months I've worked with you, my visual dependency has gotten so much better. Like I'm like 99.9% there. And that was a lot of, I would tell people, they'd say, what are you doing for exercise? And I would tell them, like, I know this sounds ridiculous. Like, it's the craziest thing. I have to stare at a wall for 40 seconds. And they're like, what? And I'm like, but it's the craziest little things, but it made the difference. It made the difference.
Yeah. And if you're watching this, and I think now, Beth, you can like attest this. This is one of the reasons it's so hard to, like, when people ask, what did you do? And it's hard to respond to an Instagram comment, right? Because a lot of the stuff we did, especially on the visual dependence, is kind of unique. It's something that I've developed over time to treat visual dependence. And it's not the most, if you just typed in, it would be hard to explain in a comment, impossible to do, honestly.
It's so hard.
That's why I don't try. I promise you it's not, if everybody could do the same thing and it would work, I promise I would type it in a comment and it'd be amazing. Let's take a little time, talk to us about what's going on now. Like celebrating the wins is something we've done along the way. Where are we at with work, fitness stuff, the ability to go for a walk, go to stores, social stuff? Yeah, just talk us through kind of where things are at right now.
Well, I'm living my life. I'm living my life. I can go to stores now. Stores don't bother me at all. And stores were horrible, horrible when I first started my journey with this and everything. And now, like, I went shopping first thing at 7 o'clock this morning. I went 3 stores, no problems whatsoever. And sometimes some things might set it up. It's just a quick little breath. You're good. You get to move on, because you still have that reaction. Like, my body is still getting used to dealing with it. I wouldn't say dealing with it. That's right. Just responding. That's a better word, is responding to things that are going on around me. And it has come such a long way. I think I told you last year, I couldn't put Legos together. I had bought a Winnie the Pooh Lego set. I couldn't sit still. My hands were shaking. My nervous system was just shot with everything. And just last night, actually, I put 16 Legos together and didn't even think twice about it until after I went, oh my God, I just put 16 Legos together. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But I spin around with my nieces right now and I feel nothing afterwards.
Yeah.
I go for walks now, and before I would feel like a bobblehead.
Yeah.
Almost like I was like walking on marshmallows and stuff like that. And I go for walks, and if I had to put a percentage on it, I'm like 99% of the way there. I just had a recent win where I went almost an entire month with very little to none, which was huge. Huge.
And as we talked about, if you're watching this, right, like the last little bit is partially understanding that, like, hey, there's challenging days before this, and helping your brain stay calm if you're tired, if you don't feel quite, like, letting it pass, and you're doing a great job with that. But that's often, having been through this personally, that's a time thing. It can take some time to let your brain fully let go of the worry about this stuff. Like,
and that's actually probably the hardest point, is getting your brain to realize that it's okay, and to not think about it all day long. And that's why it's hard for you to put in a video too. How do you not think about it? If you could put it would make, we'd all be cured in a day if we could stop thinking about it. And unfortunately, because it encompasses everything when you move and everything. I think the biggest advice I can give to people is, which I never knew what this meant, to give yourself grace. And you and I always talked about this. And you said to me on one of my sessions, what makes you think you're not okay? I think that was the words that you had used. And I said, well, because I still have these things. You go, and I think one of the biggest stepping points and progression to the next step is, you said to me, there's nothing broken. Like, you're good. There's nothing broken. And that's what I kept saying to myself. And that's really when I made a big turn with you, when I really started seeing less and less days with symptoms, as I just keep telling myself, I'm not broken. I'm good. Like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And that was a big turning point, you saying that.
Totally. Yeah. And that's, when we think about like, people can make things sound so confusing. Like, how do I regulate my nervous system? How do I do it? And a lot of it is like, how do we get back to living the life that was normal for you? Get back to thinking about things that you were thinking about before, like kind of breaking the cycle. And a lot of what I try to help people with is that, because like your experience, it can be an extremely powerful part of this. Last thing I wanted to kind of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just say, and throughout our journey, we had dips, which were normal.
Yes. And
sometimes maybe it was because I'm an A-type personality who, if you tell me to run, I'll run it faster than you could ever run. Like in my stress test, I asked them what the record was of how far someone went. And she's like, this is a stress test. I'm like, yeah, but I got to beat the record. Like, how long did someone run for?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people like myself who have these, who are very driven people, A personalities, I think we're the ones that actually get this type of condition, because we do put so much stress on ourselves. And I think the biggest thing you can do is give yourself grace. And if you don't know what that means, don't answer those work phone calls when you're done with work. Take some time for yourself. Go for a walk all by yourself. When I used to go for my runs before, because I used to run 3-4 days a week, I would think about everything I'm supposed to be doing work-wise. I'm like, I'm missing the whole idea of a run. The whole idea for a run is to relax. And that was one of the biggest things we kind of talked about too, is just giving myself grace and stop thinking all the time.
Yeah.
So,
it means how that translates into practice is unique for everybody. And I think you've been able to find the way that it worked for you, which is awesome. Kind of wrapping up here, because I know you got to get going. I got to get going. But Yeah. Any last comments? I appreciate you taking the time to kind of to share your story.
I would say, you know, Dr. Drew was my last resort. I said, if he can't do it, I don't know what else I'm going to do. And I had such great success with you. And I can't thank you enough because you gave me my life back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm menopausal too, so I cry a lot.
Yeah.
But you know, I wake up every day and I'm not worried about waking up. I'm not worried about going to the store or going on a trip. You know, I drove 5 hours to go see my son, and I got in my car like it was nobody's business, and I drove it like a champ. And
Yeah.
you know, I think people try and put a number amount on it, and you know, you can't. You can't. Is there really a price to pay to get your health back? I would have paid anything to get my life back. And every dime I spent with you was absolutely 100% worth it. I wouldn't change it for the world. And I'm continuing on with you because I'm past my 3 month mark, and I'm still gonna continue on with you because you've gotten me to where no one else could get me to before. So I thank you enough for that.
I appreciate the kind words, and you know, I'll reference back to something we talked about when we first met, because this is a journey that we went on together, that we're on together. And I appreciate you, like I said, the kind words about my role in this, but also to you for putting in the work and trusting the process and the effort. Because if you're watching this, I promise you it was not me waving my magic hands, right? It's a process that we went on together. There's ups and downs, there's work, there's effort. And that's reality. There is no one out there who can wave their magic hands. And so I appreciate you, you putting in the effort. And yeah, if you're watching this, thanks for checking it out. And thanks to Beth for taking the time to do this. So
Absolutely. Anytime.
uh,